Judge Chapman felt the court had no jurisdiction to prosecute Wairigi. He did encourage the prosecutor to appeal the decision.
Adán Moya recibió una llamada por teléfono en su trabajo diciéndole que tenía que regresar a su casa para tomar cuidado.
The majority of Americans don't come from the fields of Salinas in blistering heat and reach the pinnacle of a given industry.
These soldiers generally last about 30 days, but things are moving so fast in Washington that soldiers here are having to cram that training.
It's just a tremendous success to see someone that comes from extremely humble roots, but folks that are proud, folks that are talented, folks that are committed, and folks that believe in helping one another and supporting one another. And that so much tells the story of many Latino families.
Mexicans here in Mexico and all across Latin America also. They're expecting about 10 million.
You talk about a profile in courage. To see a young man who comes from this background, whose family had to work just to struggle to survive, but instilled in him the value of getting an education, of doing something with your life that's important, helping others, reaching out. Don't be lazy. Don't play into stereotypes. Get out there and make a difference as a person of color, as a person from a cultural community that needs to be recognized more for what it contributes to America. For this young man to do something like that is extraordinary.
We're live in San Jose. I'm Damian Trujillo, NBC Bay Area News. My dad was called a Bracero. He came here back during the Korean War, second wave of the Bracero Program. Ultimately, that helped him get his green card, and that's how he was able to bring my mom and my siblings across.
I was just glamorized with all the lights because where we came from there was no electricity. They were barely gonna, install it. So all night I spent looking at the window.
De ahí para acá pues fue mucho sufrimiento que hubo mucho sufrimiento.
It was a station wagon, and it was 3 dads were in the front, which was my dad's compadre driver and my dad and another person, and then in the back seat it was my mom and the 2 other ladies, 2 of which had babies in there, holding babies. And in the back of the station wagon it was 6 kids.
We just remember my dad saying, "Your mom is sick, I need to take her to the hospital." And when she came back, it's like we had another brother. It's like, oh my God, what happened?
It was a trailer with only 2 rooms, and there was no time to be scared. My mom and dad slept in one room with a baby, and everybody else slept in the other room.
I think it wore my mom out. She's permanently disabled because she has, you name it and she has it. But I think field work had a lot to do with it. And I lost my dad to cancer, and I think he acquired the cancer working in the fields.
Y así me la pasé en el field trabajando mucho, de sol a sol. Mucho, mi esposo también, los dos trabajábamos mucho.
I remember that she would work also in the fields. I would come home from school, and she'd come home at 4 o'clock, and she'd slam a Budweiser and start rolling up her sleeves and start cooking for everybody.
At that time, all the families would carry their kids in their station wagon, and they would stay in the fields on the side of the field while the parents worked. And they would stay in the car all day long.
My dad was hardworking. Sometimes I wouldn't see him because he worked out in the fields, and he was an irrigator. He irrigated the fields, and sometimes that required him to get up at 2 in the morning and turn the sprinklers on because by 7 a.m. the winds would start howling. There were times when all we had to eat were beans and tortillas. And I mean, we didn't know any better. We were fine with it.
Porque pues primero teníamos que darles de comer. Pero también necesitaban zapatos, también necesitaban ropa. Y eso fue lo más triste para nosotros. Eso era lo más triste, que no teníamos para darles todo lo suficiente.
My dad drank. My dad smoked. My dad worked sun up to sundown, literally. And maybe that's why all of that came in. Yeah, we were spanked. We were belted. We were hit with a branch or a shoe or whatever was handy. And that was their form of discipline. And that's all what they've apologized for.
When my dad bought a house, everybody would say, "Are you crazy? You plan on staying here? What do you think? You know, you're leaving your town, you're betraying, you know, your country." And my dad said, "I only want the best for my kids."
It was a 3-bedroom home, and there were 10 of us living in it.
For the first time, we had a home we could call a home that, you know, he was trying his best to make it better.
It used to be my room here, mine, and I shared with 5 of my brothers. Sundays we would all get up, the 3 younger ones, we would get up at 7 a.m. just lay in bed with my parents in here and just talk.
La cocina estaba muy chiquita, la cocina. Bueno, así como está toda aquí.
This was our dining area here, so there were 10 of us crammed in here.
Since he was a little boy, we knew he was not going to be like the rest of us. When Mom and I would come home from work, he was always waiting for us at the gate. As soon as we drove up, he'd run beside the car saying, "Hey, Mom, so-and-so called, and Ruben hit Manuel, and this happened, and this other thing happened." And this...
Era como un reporte que nos estaba dando. Le decíamos, "Muchacho, usted va a ser reportero", le decíamos, porque todo iba a anunciarnos antes de llegar a la casa. Ya sabíamos lo que había pasado en la casa.
And he used to grab a pencil, and I guess he thought it was a microphone, and then he would start just talking, like having an interview or making a commercial or something like that, just putting it, over his mouth and just saying, this Damian Trujillo.
In 7th grade, they started taking me to the fields officially and start working there, and I hated it. I complained and I cussed, and I would yell at my dad, and I kind of regret that. But it was tough.
My dad took Damian to the fields. He used to hate it. I mean, we never argued with our dad because he was very strict, but he always got the courage to complain, but he did it. He complained, but he did it.
Mi esposo me dijo, "Me los voy a llevar al field para que sepan lo que es trabajar en el field. O estudian o trabajan."
Like my dad used to say, so they can echarle ganas a la educación, so they can push the education.
I want my kids to know what it's like. This is what Daddy used to do, Mommy. Yes. Daddy used to wear these really old shoes.
You mean like these?
Mm-hmm. You see what this is? It's lettuce. And it goes from here to the stores. It's important for them to come back out here. I mean, I would have loved to get a job at McDonald's when I was a kid, when I was growing up. I applied at the local Round Table Pizza here, but I couldn't get that job. I was trying anything to get out of field work.
Our students were bused down to King City, bus down, bus back. It was hard on them. They had a 30-minute drive every day to get to school. They felt like the high school was prejudiced against Greenfield kids. They felt left out.
We were like outsiders because we were from Greenfield. There, we were like secondhand. It wasn't like firsthand. You kind of help the King City kids first, and then we have time, we'll get to you guys. But if you don't, we don't get to you guys.
I was called a wetback in high school, junior high school, and you can call me a lot of things, but wetback are kind of fighting words. When you really think about it, it's an insult to those who are trying to get to this country to better their lives and the lives of their families. They cross the river and their backs get wet, and they call them wetbacks. The Mayflower came across a body of water. But, you know, we call them the new Americans.
Even though his mom and dad and his brothers and sisters didn't have the opportunity to go on to school, Damian had this dream and this vision that he could go out and do, because of their encouragement, what they weren't able to do.
I wanted to be with the smart kids. I wanted to challenge them and have them challenge me. And so even though I thought that I was going to drop out of high school, I was always in the college prep classes.
Damian had a drive that allowed him to stand up in class. Sometimes students don't want to stand out in class. They don't want to be a schoolboy or a schoolgirl. And he didn't let that bother him. He knew what he wanted, and that was the way he was going to go.
The first one to graduate from high school was Damian. And from there, my brother Joe and Jesus. So they were the ones, they were our hope, basically, to break the chain that we call of people, you know, not following in their parents' footsteps.
Fue un día maravilloso para nosotros porque nadie se había graduado y él era el primero. Yo sentía una cosa en mi corazón.
Somehow I said, I want more. And I applied on my own to San Jose State. I had no idea what college was. Never saw an application that long before, and scared. But I filled it out and said, let's do this. To me, college was a get-out-of-town ticket. I mean, I wanted to get out of town because there was just nothing there. There were no opportunities there.
He was the first one to leave the home. He was going to be all alone in San Jose with nobody to take care of him.
I first met him when we were working at the college radio station at San Jose State. He came in as a freshman, wide-eyed, not knowing what to expect, but knowing that he wanted something better.
I knew Damian when he was a student starting out in journalism, showing a great deal of promise and a lot of energy. When he talked, people would shut up and listen because he was able to articulate what his family was going through and what people in his community were trying to deal with and what were really important issues that we should be writing about.
He was the most persistent of all the San Jose State seniors in journalism who were seeking an internship. But he knew that he wasn't going to give up.
The thing that really stuck out for me is he would go after very tough stories, sometimes potentially dangerous stories, because he felt there was a community need to expose certain things.
He was learning and working, and he wanted to assimilate, but at the same time, he wanted to keep his roots. I think the experience for Damian there was one of self-discovery, and I think there's a lot of things that he realized coming to a big city, a big university.
We had this show called Radio Aztlán. We called ourselves the Brown Berets of the airwaves. And we pushed the button a lot, we pushed the envelope a lot. But in doing these interviews on the radio, I started enjoying what that was like. I fell in love with the microphone.
We actually worked to establish a fraternity on campus at San Jose State. And we invited everyone in. It just so happened the guys that started were all Latinos, and it was a way for us to build a support structure because, you know, it was somewhat lacking on campus at that point. So we figured, well, if no one else is going to help us, why don't we just kind of get together and help ourselves?
Loans, grants, Cal Grant, Pell Grant, you name it, I applied for it. And just DJing on weekends, my family helped. My mom, my sisters, my brothers would send me money.
They didn't have a car to give him, so he had a bike. They bought him a bike. So every time it rained, my mom would suffer. He would say, he's getting wet, you know. So that makes me kind of emotional because he was getting wet. And then afterwards, my mom tried, and my dad got him a car.
There are strong consequences for us if I failed in school. If I failed in school, the consequences were I'd go back in the fields, and it scared the living daylights out of me.
Bueno, fue una cosa que no puedo explicar el gusto que da cuando se gradúa uno de sus hijos.
My dad always told me, you are the girl. You're not going to go to school. So I had that in my head since I was a little girl, that I was never going to go to high school, and that I was never going to go to the university, and that I was never going to be, someone important. I knew that, but I always wanted my brothers to. I always did. So when Damian fulfilled that, it was like my dream. He graduated with me.
It breaks my heart that my sister and my brothers sacrificed their careers for me. She's like my second mom, but yeah, they did.
He wanted to demonstrate to his parents that the sacrifices they made so he could become educated would give him other opportunities to do things that they could be extremely proud of, and say that, it was worth it. Valió mucho. It was really worth all the time and energy we put into working in the fields to give Damian these opportunities.
Sufrió mucho, tanto él como nosotros, porque no encontraba trabajo.
There was a time when he was becoming very, very frustrated because he couldn't get a job. He couldn't land a job.
I couldn't find a job in journalism. I have a stack of rejection letters from across the country saying you don't have the qualifications.
He actually hand wrote a letter to himself, a sign actually, and he taped it to his bedroom door that said, "I will be a TV journalist."
9 months after graduating, then Telemundo in San Jose called and said, "Hey, I don't have a reporting position, but I have a job on the assignments desk if you want it." And it's the person who dishes out story ideas and whatnot.
Ahora esas dos niñas tendrán que pasar la Navidad.
So I became a reporter, and then I was there reported for a year and a half at Telemundo, and I've been at KNTV ever since.
He was an apprentice reporter first, and this was a position that KNTV had years ago when Damian first started.
It gave him the opportunity, but it also, has a little bit of a label to it. Being maybe a second-level reporter, when you put apprentice on there, it means you're still learning.
It's unusual for someone to be as good as he was, as young as he was.
Two top Democrats vying for the president's seat squared off in Washington.
I've seen a lot of people try to make the transition from Spanish-speaking news to English-speaking news, and it's not easy. It's not just a matter of a language, it's a matter of a culture.
But this is work. This is the control room. The first time I heard myself, I said, "Who is that guy?" Because I didn't recognize my voice. I didn't know that I had an accent. And I was shocked for a while because, here I thought that I was a regular American kid.
I've heard some of the comments where people will say, like, "Gosh, Damian's so good for being a Mexican," or "Damian's so good at what he does for being Latino." And I think it's just ignorance that people just don't know what they're saying, but people like the work that he does and that he produces.
Damian Trujillo, NBC Bay Area News. Someone called the front desk with a compliment and said, "Hey, that reporter Damian's getting better now." "Oh, thanks, I'll make sure I'll let him know." "Yeah, he doesn't sound like a gang member anymore."
When students come to us with an accent or a personal style or way of saying things that represents a culture or a life experience, I tell them, bravo. Don't let people take that away from you. Don't let us homogenize that away. Identity starts with the uniqueness.
Hello and welcome to Comunidad del Valle. I'm Damian Trujillo.
In Greenfield, as a kid, as a 12-year-old, I watched this show for no reason other than it intrigued me that there was a Latino hosting a show, which is something that I never saw growing up.
It makes him feel so proud when non-Latinos are watching his show, Comunidad del Valle, a show about the community and Latino affairs. And non-Latinos are interested in that. And I think that's where he's really made his niche in reaching a wide array of audiences and cultures.
Whenever I was growing up as an African American in Chicago, when I would look for somebody black on the air who was representing the culture in a positive and an informative way. Damian does that for the Mexican-American community. He does that for people of color in general. He does that for any cultural group underrepresented in the media or in society as power brokers.
I sent an email to the higher-ups at NBC Corporate, and I said, what's our policy on using the words illegals, the illegals, or illegal alien? And it stirred up a conversation throughout the entire network. So the policy became, we do not use the words illegals, the illegals. We prefer undocumented immigrants.
I mean, he's willing to challenge the upper management to make sure that our community is respected, our community is treated with dignity.
It took the industry a long time to hire people of Latino, Hispanic, Chicano background. The arrival was not pain-free. That's okay. We arrived.
I was running for San Jose GI Forum Queen. It was a pageant geared for scholarships for college. And Damian was a part of the all-Latino fraternity at San Jose State that helped set up the chairs, the tables, and get the pageant ready.
I was volunteering, and I saw her, and I said, oh my God, I want to marry that girl. I hadn't even met her. And my friends laughed because she was beautiful.
Fast forward, we ended up meeting. I was San Jose State journalism student, and I went through the same classes that he went through, but different times. My broadcast journalism teacher used to tell me, you have interests, like one of my former students, his name's Damian Trujillo. You should try calling him one of these days and see if you can go on a ride along with him.
The first time Damian went to meet Monica's parents, her dad being by trade a butcher, asked Damian if he wanted to see his set of knives.
So it was going to be the first time we were meeting in person, and he showed up at my front door, and I was like, oh my God. I think I probably had like 5-inch heels, and I was like, he's kind of short. So I ended up changing my shoes and put on flats.
I think Monica has an inch or so on him, without heels.
Still, as the way I see Damian, he's still Damian. When we talk to him, he's still the same character. He still jokes around, and he's just kind of nice.
Doesn't change a lot. He still looks the same.
He's still about the same height.
I think our culture drives us, and it's the values that come with being Mexican American are, we're a strong religious background. Our faith is important to us. We want our kids to be proud of who they are and where their ancestors are from.
Mommy, you need to, this is called comprensión. You need to understand what you read.
I remember on Cesar Chavez's holiday, he had his children out in the fields picking lettuce, cutting lettuce, so they could get a little bit of a feel for what he did when he was a child.
It's an eagle that represents Cesar Chavez and what he did for the farm workers.
Sí.
Se puede.
Sí se puede. It means you can do anything you want to do?
Yes.
Yes.
He is such a key leader within our community in his own particular way. And he has a tremendous impact and outreach to people on a consistent basis.
He wasn't that flashy guy, gotta grab that camera light and be a star. He's not that guy. He is a very steady, very dedicated working journalist.
To me, I'm proud.
We're all proud of Damian.
And we know that he came from this community, so everything's possible.
He is an asset to American journalism. There aren't too many families like the Trujillo family. They're all solid representatives of not only their culture, what their parents taught them, but they're fine Americans.
I'm a Chicano. I'm an American. The flag is outside my front door. I love this country. I was born here. But my roots are deep in Mexican culture, and I don't hide that, and I tout it. But I'm a proud American.
Why does anybody need to hear a Damian Trujillo story? Because we all need to be encouraged. Life is tough. Many of us are up against it. People don't seem to understand some of the things that our lives bring to us that we struggle with and deal with. It is really great to be able to turn on the television and see a guy who has grown before our eyes, inspired us to keep going, listened to us, and took our ideas and turned them into valuable news stories to benefit the entire community.
You're in the public eye. You have the ability and the tools to make a difference, and I want to do that.
I think Damian's story is very common to many people. It's a story of someone who had worked in the fields. We're talking about the Salinas Valley of where he grew up, and it's a very cultural story that many people share.
Sus raíces fueron del campo, ahí empezó él. Ahí empezó.
Even when you think that it's dark, there is a light at the end of the tunnel. We had to push until you get what you want to. And it can be done, and Damian has proved that it can be done.
I never imagined I'd be in this position, and I didn't get here alone. When the camera lights go off at 6:30 after my live shot, it's not over. It's never over. There's a lot of work to do still.